Tonight on Primetime, President Zelensky says Ukraine has sent proposals to the US to end war with Russia, but wants more help from backers. Could a deal to end the conflict finally be on the way? Ukraine says it has submitted proposals to the United States aimed at ending the war with Russia, as Washington steps up efforts to revive peace talks. President Zelensky says Kyiv is ready to negotiate, but is calling for stronger US support and greater pressure on Moscow to reach a deal.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Tuesday that Kyiv had submitted proposals to U.S. negotiators as Washington works to revive efforts to end the war with Russia, now in its fifth year. In his evening address, Zelensky said Ukraine had shared its proposals with the American side, while calling for stronger U.S. support for Ukraine's air defenses and greater pressure on Russia to bring the war to an end.
There was a briefing by the negotiating team. We have conveyed our proposals to the American side, and the United States can help strengthen our defense, first and foremost with air defense, and put pressure on Russia so that its plans are different, to prepare for an end to the war rather than prolonging it.
Zelensky did not disclose any details of the proposals. The statement comes as Washington continues its efforts to restart negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow, with U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner expected to engage with both sides. Ukraine has repeatedly said it is ready for negotiations and an unconditional ceasefire, but insists any peace deal must include credible security guarantees. Zelensky spoke after accusing Russia of using North Korean-supplied ballistic missiles during an overnight attack on the southeastern city of Zaporizhia.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that Moscow will respond if European countries seize Russian merchant vessels. Speaking during military exercises on Sakhalin Island, Putin accused some countries of violating maritime law and called potential vessel seizures piracy and robbery. He also accused NATO of expanding in the Asia-Pacific and warned of rising regional tensions. The remarks come as the EU steps up pressure on Russia's so-called shadow fleet. So where does the conflict stand now? With me is Alexandra Filipenko, a political analyst who joins us from Vilnius, Lithuania. Alexandra, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what might these latest proposals to Washington contain, and how far could Kyiv realistically be prepared to compromise in order to secure an end to the war?
Well, first of all, I think that there we might see an immediate ceasefire along the existing line of conflict. This is what Kiev has been talking about for a long time now, and this is what Russia desperately does not want. Russia wants first an agreement and ceasefire later. But as we've heard from President Trump, the American side also supports the idea of immediate ceasefire along the current line of conflict. And also, I'm sure in these proposals, we might see the concrete, legally binding guarantees in exchange for accepting that frozen front line. We understand that Ukraine right now needs more Patriot missiles, so air defense and more Patriots in general, and more air defense and more munitions, more military aid from the American side through payments from Europe. I think this is also what is in those proposals. In exchange, Kyiv can stop its current operation because first President Zelensky talked about a 40-day operation to make Russia come to the negotiation table. It didn't happen, although we've seen very successful attacks from the Ukrainian side on Russian Amazon, as it's called, Wildberries, and different oil refineries. And we see the continued continuation of that operation right now, including today, that happened and was quite successful on the Ukrainian side.
Okay, and Alexandra, with US negotiators expected to visit both Ukraine and Russia, are we seeing the beginning of a genuine process for peace, or are the two sides still too far apart on the fundamental issues?
Right now, the diplomatic track is stalled largely because of the war with Iran. But Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner may soon re-engage and visit both countries, especially after Russian side freed a U.S. Marine. They set him free, although he was imprisoned in Russia in 2022. First, he got a 4-year sentence, then he got a 10-year sentence. The American side is saying that it's a bogus sentence. It was all fake, it was all made up, and he was a hostage in Russia. And in the end, it came down to Russia just freeing him, although he is on the brink of life and death. It's a life-death situation right now. But what the Russian side has said, that they engaged with Steve Witkoff, and that's a goodwill gesture on the Russian side. Marco Rubio, the state secretary, wrote on Twitter, on X, that he's thankful to the Russian side that the Russian side engaged with Steve Witkoff. So we might expect more engagement coming up after that former American Marine was freed from Russia, from Russian prison and terrible conditions in a Russian prison. And Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner never visited Kyiv. They are expected in Kyiv maybe at the end of August, maybe sooner. The last time they were in Moscow, it was in January this year. So yes, I think we might see the new diplomatic track, or the revival of the former diplomatic track, although this time I believe Marco Rubio, state secretary, will play a bigger role, unlike the last time.
Okay, and Alexandra, Russia has suffered setbacks globally since the start of the conflict in Africa and elsewhere. Do you see this as having an impact on a deal?
Absolutely, of course, for Russia, the engagement in different parts of the world, including Iran, including the African continent, including all other parts of the world, is very, very important. And Russian officials have been trying to play the card of Russia being a strong leader also on the international stage, although we haven't seen this happening. And Russian officials have claimed that there is much support for Russia and for Russian efforts, for Russian war, from different countries all over the world. That's what the Kremlin has been trying to portray for Russians and for world leaders, and in general for all countries of the world. So of course the setbacks are playing a big part, especially when the Kremlin is trying to put on a happy and successful face.
And how important is the US decision to engage directly with both Moscow and Kyiv, Alexandra? And what does Washington currently have enough leverage over the two sides to force meaningful concessions?
Of course, Washington has leverage over Ukraine, because Ukraine needs missiles, Ukraine needs military, not even support, but in general, military equipment coming in from the United States. It's not just support, it's not aid, because it's being paid for by the Europeans. So, of course, the United States, the White House really has leverage. Regarding Russia, economic pressure can be vital for Russia. It can be very dangerous for Russia. Economic pressure, what kind of pressure? Pressuring China, pressuring India, pressuring those who are buying Russian resources, Russian gas, Russian oil. And right now in the House of Representatives, we see that the proposal by Lindsey Graham, the sanctions bill as of now, is right now in the House. It passed the Senate, and it might be signed by the president as early as September. So this can be real pressure, so that economic engagement of the United States pressuring countries, right, buying Russian oil and Russian gas, that might be a real problem for Moscow.
And how might Putin see the US conflict with Iran as impacting on any deal?
the Kremlin is seeing that the United States don't have much time to talk about war in Europe, since the United States are busy with the Iran conflict and busy with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, Russia understands that it might continue selling oil while the Strait of Hormuz is closed. We saw the lifting of some sanctions from Russian oil and gas during the Operation Epic Fury, during the American operation. But those sanctions are back in place. And of course, the Kremlin would be very interested in the continuation of the American conflict with Iran. That is why Russia has been helping Iranians to strike the neighboring countries, including, and first of all, of course, American bases. So for the Kremlin, for Russia, the conflict with Iran, the American-Iranian conflict, is a present, because the United States don't have that much time and don't have that much weapons anymore after the start of Epic Fury, that operation of the United States.
Okay, now, Alexander, one final question. Now, after 4.5 years of war, how much pressure are both Zelensky and the Kremlin under to reach an agreement? And which side currently has more to gain from prolonging these negotiations?
Well, I must say that since President Zelensky has said that basically they don't have Patriot missiles, they don't have missiles that can protect Ukraine from ballistics, and ballistic missiles are flying into Ukrainian cities, into civilians, and Russia is buying ballistic missiles, not only producing around more than 150 ballistic missiles a month, they're also buying from North Korea. So right now, Ukraine is under bigger pressure to stop the war right now, while Russia wants to prolong the conflict into winter, when Moscow can actually hit energy and everything, heating and lighting, and leave Ukraine without heat and light during winter time. This is what Moscow is aiming for, and they would like to prolong this conflict to make Volodymyr Zelensky just give up all the territory Moscow wants, even the territory that Russia does not control right now, is not occupied territory, but it's written in to the Russian constitution.
Alexandra, thank you so much for joining us on Primetime this evening. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, after the break, Azerbaijan sets out plans to make Nakhchivan a connectivity hub for the region. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Azerbaijan says Nakhchivan is set to become a key connectivity hub for the South Caucasus region, linking major transport and energy routes. During a visit to the Autonomous Republic, President Ilham Aliyev outlined plans to upgrade its railway network connected to the Zangezur corridor and expand its role in transport links.
Nakhchivan is emerging as an important part of Azerbaijan's wider connectivity strategy. The region is set to become a key link between Azerbaijan's mainland territory, Turkey and Iran, while its planned connection to the Zangezur corridor could further integrate it into regional transport networks. President Ilham Aliyev says the Nakhchivan route will serve two major transport directions.
This will be a branch of the east-west transport corridor. At the same time, it will be a branch of the north-south transport corridor.
The east-west connection would link the South Caucasus with Turkey and further towards European markets, while the north-south route could provide an additional connection between Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran and markets further south. Azerbaijan plans to upgrade the Nakhchivan railway to significantly increase its capacity. The target is to eventually handle at least 15 million tons of cargo a year.
Our goal is to have at least 15 million tons of cargo transit through this transport corridor.
The railway is also expected to become part of the wider Zangezur corridor project. Under the TRIPP framework agreed in Washington, the proposed route through Armenia is intended to connect Azerbaijan's mainland with Nakhchivan and create a new transport link across the South Caucasus. But the vision goes beyond railways and highways.
This project is not merely a railway or a highway. Fiber optic cables, power lines, and in the future, if needed, oil and gas pipelines can also pass through here.
That would make the corridor a multimodal connectivity route, potentially carrying cargo, electricity, digital infrastructure and energy resources. Nakhchivan is also being developed as part of Azerbaijan's renewable energy strategy. Solar and hydroelectric projects are planned with the potential to generate hundreds of megawatts of electricity and eventually support exports to Turkey, Iran and Europe. Aliyev says the broader objective is to turn Nakhchivan into a major regional hub.
Nakhchivan will turn into an indispensable transport hub. This is entirely possible.
For Azerbaijan, Nakhchivan's strategic importance goes beyond its immediate geography. Its position places it at the intersection of several emerging connectivity routes across the South Caucasus, linking transport, energy and digital networks.
Joining me now for more on this is Dr. Farhat Husseinov, Associate Professor at Baku State University. Dr. Farhat, welcome to Primetime.
Thank you.
Now, what's the strategic importance of turning Nakhchivan in particular into a major transport and connectivity hub?
First of all, we are talking that it's not just some smaller regional railway project. It's creating the broader connectivity platform. And Nakhchivan, I will put it forward straight away, now is being transformed from the isolated exclave into the connected regional hub. So that's the main point we should keep in our minds. And through Nakhchivan, the bigger Eurasia will be connected. Unfortunately, for the last decades, as Nakhchivan cannot fulfill its geographical potential due to the conflict with Armenia, due to Armenian aggression. But nowadays, this obstacle is being put aside, and Nakhchivan will finally being exploited as the geographical, geopolitical hub for connecting not only mainland Azerbaijan, but also the bigger Eurasia, Central Asia, South Caucasus, and further to east and west.
And as well as upgrading almost 200 kilometres of track, this route needs 10 stations, plus freight terminals and logistics centres. What timescale could this take, and what are the challenges?
That's a very interesting question. A very interesting question. I haven't worked in even a single day in railway construction, so I cannot tell you the specific timetable. But from what I understand, from Mr. President's interview, it's quite a big amount of work. But we will finish next year the section of Zangezur corridor in Azerbaijani section, and it took us several years. Nakhchivan section is much shorter, so definitely it will not happen overnight, but Azerbaijan has a very big experience in carrying out this bigger infrastructure project, so I'm sure that it will not take too long. Unfortunately, our neighbor, it took more than 5 years for our neighbor to build its shorter section. I mean, it's only 42 kilometers, and Armenia still didn't begin to construct its section of the railway. But I hope that this year, and if I'm not mistaken, during the one of conversation with President Trump, our president knew that this year they will begin construct their part. And I hope that maybe that section will take longer than 200 kilometers in Nakhchivan. But again, Azerbaijan has a huge experience, and it will not take much time.
Now, Iran is lobbying for an alternative route connecting mainland Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan. How would the development of the Zangezur corridor affect Iran's role and the wider geopolitical balance over regional transit routes?
I think that Iran shouldn't be worried about this project, and this is not a question of rivalry. Maybe it's just a very healthy competition. The countries will have many choices, more choices, but it doesn't mean that one country will be excluded from the transport system of the greater Eurasia. And the reason for this, because in the interview, the President of Azerbaijan Republic, Ilham Aliyev, said that Nakhchivan has the potential to develop not only east and west direction of the east and west direction, but also north and south direction of transport corridors. Because in Julfai, in Nakhchivan, the railway can join Iranian railway system as well. So I think that in Iran they understand that, and they also should understand the benefits of developing Nakhchivani's railway system. Because Nakhchivani, summarizing, I will put it this way: Nakhchivan railway system will not exclude Iranians' option. On the contrary, it may join and add up value to the Iranian railway system, and also connect Iranian railway systems to middle corridor and as well develop the north and south transport corridor.
And one last question, Dr. Farhat. Azerbaijan envisages electricity transmission and fibre optic cables with oil and gas pipelines potentially following later. How do you see that developing?
Could you please repeat? I didn't hear the question.
Sure. So Azerbaijan envisages electricity transmission and fibre optic cables as well, with oil and gas pipelines potentially following later. How do you see that developing?
Okay. I see. Okay. So, as our president put it, this is not just about railway project. This is about fiber optic cables, about power lines, and in future, if necessary, about gas and oil pipelines. Up until now, Nakhchivan was mainly consumer of energy. But we have a strategic aim to turn in Nakhchivan into energy producer and maybe energy exporter. And that's something new that we want to bring to the table, because we want to be presented into new markets, and Nakhchivan is a valuable asset. It has potential in generating more electricity, and also being a transit for transmission electricity, not only from Azerbaijan. For example, Azerbaijan is Jabrail district, but President mentioned also the Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan agreement with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan for transmitting electricity from Central Asia to Europe.
Dr.
And Nakhchivan also a part of this broader network.
Dr. Farhad, thank you so much for joining us on Prime Time. I appreciate your analysis this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
And after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the world. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time on A News. More on our top story now, because Ukraine has reportedly suspended drone attacks on oil tankers using Russia's Black Sea port of Novorossiysk. It follows a request from US Vice President J.D. Vance. The move is said to come amid concerns over disruptions to oil exports from Kazakhstan through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. Fariza Kalimurzina has more from Almaty.
Ukraine has suspended drone attacks on oil tankers using the Russian Black Sea port of Novorossiysk, following a request from US Vice President J.D. Vance, according to the Financial Times. The request was reportedly made last month after Washington raised concerns that the attacks could destabilize global oil markets and harm American business interests. The tankers in question carry crude oil from Kazakhstan through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium to its export terminal near Novorossiysk. The Financial Times says Kyiv agreed not to target CPC infrastructure or vessels with no links to Russia, provided they are not under Ukrainian sanctions and are not carrying Russian oil or other Russian cargo. The issue became particularly acute in July. Reuters reports that drone attacks in the Black Sea reduced the CPC oil loadings by as much as 20%. Kazakhstan was forced to temporarily restrict shipments along the route, while the country's oil production fell by 14% compared with June, according to sources. For Kazakhstan, the CPC is a crucial export route, but the disruption also affects major Western investors. US energy giants Chevron and ExxonMobil are both involved in the CPC and have significant stakes in Kazakhstan's oil industry. Chevron holds a 50% stake in Tengizchevroil, the company that operates the Tengiz oil field, while ExxonMobil holds 25%. The growing risks have pushed Kazakhstan to look more actively at alternative export routes, including the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. Around 1.2 million tons of Kazakh oil currently move through that route each year, and Azerbaijan says it's ready to increase that volume to 2.2 million tons. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Meanwhile, Turkish authorities are investigating the latest in a series of mysterious drone discoveries along the country's Black Sea coast. Adam Morrow has more from Istanbul.
Turkish authorities are examining an unidentified drone that washed ashore in the Black Sea province of Düzce, in the latest incident highlighting the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on Turkey's northern coastline. The unmanned aerial vehicle was discovered in the coastal district of Akçakoca after beachgoers spotted a suspicious object floating close to the shoreline and alerted security forces. Turkish Navy underwater defense teams quickly secured the area before recovering the drone and taking it for technical examination. Officials say the investigation is focused on determining the drone's type, origin, and how it ended up in Turkish territorial waters. According to local media reports, the device resembles a Russian-made Garan 2 drone, which itself is derived from Iran's Shahed 136 loitering munition. This assessment, however, has not yet been confirmed by the Turkish authorities. Officials have also stressed that there is no ongoing threat to public safety in the affected area. The discovery marks the latest in a growing number of drones and other war-related objects found along Turkey's Black Sea coast since late last year. Several unmanned aircraft have previously been recovered, or have even crashed in Turkish coastal provinces, including Samsun, Zonguldak, Bartın, Ordu, Artvin, and Kastamonu. Most, if not all, of these incidents are believed to be linked to military activity associated with the Russia-Ukraine war. The repeated discoveries have heightened concerns that the conflict is increasingly spilling beyond the immediate combat zone and posing risks to civilian areas and commercial shipping across the Black Sea. Since the war began in early 2022, Turkey has maintained relations with both Kiev and Moscow. But in recent weeks, Ankara has repeatedly urged the two warring parties to show restraint, warning against any actions that could threaten Black Sea security or freedom of navigation. Authorities say forensic analysis of the drone is continuing, with its exact origin expected to become clearer once technical examinations are completed. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
To the conflict in Iran now, as Tehran has stressed that to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the US must release its frozen assets and bring an end to fighting across the Middle East. In a statement, Iran's national security chief again blamed Washington for insecurity in the region. Turaj Shireliliu reports from Tehran.
The newly appointed Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Mohsen Rezai, emphasized that the Strait of Hormuz will not reopen until the U.S. changes its behavior and accepts Iran's conditions, saying that the U.S. must end the war and release Iran's frozen funds. Mohsen Rezai made the statement in a meeting with the Chinese ambassador in Tehran, Zong Qiu, during which he welcomed the constructive and stable relations between Tehran and Beijing. According to one news agency quoting official sources, Rezai blamed the U.S. for insecurity in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman, adding that Washington had put the entire region at risk by imposing a war on Iran. Saying that Iran's conditions have been conveyed to the U.S. side by intermediaries, he stressed that the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed until the United States changes its conduct and accepts Iran's conditions. Rezai also said that any agreement between Iran and Oman on transit routes through the strategic waterway would be a separate matter from the closure of the strait. The meeting was held amid reports that U.S. military targeted a vessel at the Strait of Hormuz, fading hopes of a deal over the strait and hitting the prospects of an Iran-U.S. talks with a new impasse. On Iran's bilateral ties with China, he praised the strategic partnership between Tehran and Beijing, as well as their membership in major international frameworks, including the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS. Rezai welcomed China's position regarding the anti-Iran draft resolutions at the UN Security Council during recent Israeli-US war against Iran. Turaj Shireliliu, reporting from Tehran for A News.
Pakistan is stepping up efforts to mediate between Iran and the United States over the ongoing conflict in the Gulf. Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi is in Tehran as Islamabad seeks to revive stalled diplomacy. Mariam Zia reports from Islamabad.
Pakistan is trying to revive its mediation between Iran and the United States. Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi arrived in Tehran on Tuesday. He met Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. In his meeting with the Iranian president, Naqvi described the relationship between the neighbors as strong, long-standing, and unbreakable. His visit comes as tensions around the Strait of Hormuz rise again. At the same time, Pakistan's defense minister says Washington and Tehran are close to some sort of an arrangement. But for Islamabad, reviving that dialogue will not be easy. Iran has linked any fully reopening of Hormuz to wider conditions involving the United States. Iran and Oman are also discussing arrangements for maritime traffic through the waterway. But Tehran says an understanding with Oman alone would not mean the strait is fully reopened. The waterway has become one of the most sensitive flashpoints in the regional crisis. For Pakistan, the stakes are high. Any prolonged disruption could raise energy and shipping costs. And for Pakistan, keeping Hormuz open is not only a diplomatic priority, it is an economic necessity. Marlene Zia, A News, Islamabad.
Turkmenistan is seeking to strengthen its role in transport routes connecting Central Asia with European markets. Officials have highlighted cooperation with Georgia, including the development of the Trans-Caspian and Lapis Lazuli corridors. Sevil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
Turkmenistan is stepping up cooperation with Georgia to expand transport links between Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Europe. Speaking at the conference on Caspian Sea cooperation, Turkmen Foreign Minister Rashid Muratov highlighted the development of the Middle Corridor and the Trans-Caspian Road as key areas of bilateral cooperation. The move follows a series of recent initiatives. In February, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and Georgia agreed to strengthen coordination along the Middle Corridor, including cargo transportation and digitalization. In July, during President Sardar Muhammadov's visit to Georgia, Ashgabat also said it was negotiating the establishment of a Turkmen cargo terminal on Georgia's Black Sea coast. The road would allow goods traveling from Central Asia across Caspian Sea to reach Georgian ports and continue towards Turkey and European markets. Turkmenistan and Georgia are also working on the Lapis Lazuli corridor, linking Afghanistan with Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. The push comes as the Trans-Caspian Road gains importance as countries seek to diversify trade routes and reduce reliance on traditional northern corridors. The European Union says freight volumes along the road have quadrupled since 2022 and is supporting investment in ports, railway, roads, and logistics infrastructure. For Turkmenistan, stronger links with Georgia could therefore provide greater access to Black Sea ports and European markets, while strengthening its position as a transit hub between Central Asia and the West. Sevil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
To Europe now, where Hungary is moving to reshape its political institutions in a major break with the Viktor Orban era. A new president is now taking on a key constitutional role with a pledge to restore checks and balances. Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to this day in Europe, where Hungary has elected a new president in a symbolic break from the Viktor Orban era. Parliament chose former Supreme Court President András Baka as the country's new head of state, with the backing of Prime Minister Peter Magyar's governing TISA party. The opposition Fidesz party boycotted the vote, but Baka was elected in a secret ballot by a margin of 140 votes to 6. The presidency in Hungary is largely ceremonial. However, the office can send legislation back to Parliament or refer laws to the Constitutional Court for review, giving it an important role in Hungary's constitutional system. Baka's appointment also carries personal significance. He was removed from office after publicly criticizing Orban's judicial reforms, and the European Court of Human Rights later ruled that his dismissal violated his rights. He replaces Tomasz Solyok, an Orban ally, whose term was cut short after Hungary's new government approved constitutional changes aimed at reshaping institutions built during Orban's 16 years in power. In his inaugural address, Baka said Hungary must restore checks and balances while avoiding political revenge. He said the country cannot, quote, build a common future while its citizens see each other as enemies, and that political change should not mean that from now on people will have to be afraid, be silent, or feel like outsiders in their own country. Baka pledged to serve all Hungarians regardless of political affiliation. He's expected to be sworn in August 19th and will serve until Hungary adopts a new constitution or for a maximum of 5 years. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Meanwhile, in the UK, new Prime Minister Andy Burnham is facing an early test of his climate commitments over two major North Sea oil and gas projects. Decisions over Rosebank and Jackdaw fields could put pressure on the Labour government's pledge to boost energy security against its environmental pledges. Zainab Farzadeh has more.
The future of two major North Sea oil and gas projects could become an early test of Andy Burnham's climate credentials as Prime Minister. Rosebank is a proposed oil field off Shetland, while Jekto is a gas field east of Aberdeen. Both were approved under the previous Conservative government, but those approvals were later ruled unlawful. That means fresh decisions now have to be made. The government is facing pressure from both sides. Environmental campaigners are urging to reject new fossil fuel developments, arguing that they will increase carbon emissions without bringing down household energy bills. The oil and gas industry, meanwhile, says projects such as Jekto can help strengthen energy security, support jobs, and reduce reliance on imports. Jekto is also being presented as different from Rosebank because it is a gas project which could use existing infrastructure and contribute to UK gas supplies. Rosebank, by contrast, is predominantly an oil development and has faced particularly strong opposition from climate campaigners. The decisions come at a sensitive time for Burnham. As Mayor of Greater Manchester, he backed policies aimed at reducing emissions, while Labour's 2024 manifesto pledged not to issue new North Sea exploration license, but said it would honour existing licenses. Both projects were already in the planning system. Energy Secretary Miata van Bulle has said oil and gas will remain part of the UK's energy mix during the transition. The decisions over Rosebank and Jekto could therefore provide an early indication of how Burnham intends to balance the demands of energy security with his government's climate goals. Zeina Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
After the break, we'll take a look at other top stories making headlines today. Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Rescue teams in Colombia are still searching for survivors after one of the deadliest earthquakes in its recent history. The quake has caused widespread damage in some of the poorest regions of the country, leaving thousands homeless.
At least 250 people have been killed and more than 1,600 people injured after a 7.5 magnitude earthquake hit Western Colombia on Monday morning. Rescue operations continue to try and find people trapped under the rubble. The worst damage has been reported in Cali and Pereira. Crews are breaking up large concrete slabs and forming human chains to remove debris from the site. The area is repeatedly brought to complete silence so rescuers can listen for signs of life. They say faint sounds can still be heard even after 30 hours after the quake struck. Homes, schools and health centers have been destroyed or badly damaged. Many communities in the Choco region are still without electricity and other basic services. The earthquake struck just a few days after President Abelardo de la Espriella took office. He has visited the affected areas and promised support for families who lost their homes. Work is underway to restore electricity in Cali. Some rural areas are still without power, and several traffic lights remain out of service. A nighttime curfew has been imposed in the city. Officials say troops will remain in the worst-hit areas to help maintain order. Authorities say it may take several days to determine the full extent of the damage and the final death toll.
The remnants of Typhoon Dolphin in China have brought heavy rain to Beijing and Henan province, with a risk of flooding. Beijing has issued an orange rainstorm warning, its second highest level, as the capital braced to receive more than 1/3 of its average annual rainfall in 24 hours. Experts say climate change and the El Niño weather pattern are contributing to stronger typhoons in China. The Chinese government says it's expanding the use of artificial intelligence to improve the country's resilience to extreme weather. Romania's military has destroyed 2 drones found drifting near the Neptune deep gas project in the Black Sea. Ukraine has confirmed the drones did not belong to its own forces. A controlled blast was carried out after the UAVs were spotted by a civilian ship on Tuesday, but their origins remain unclear. The offshore Neptune Deep project is due to start production in 2027 and aims to make Romania the EU's largest natural gas producer. Drone attacks in Libya have disrupted electricity supplies and put the country's oil operations under growing pressure. An attack on the South Zawiya substation caused a complete outage, cutting power to areas south of the city. The attack followed explosive-laden drone strikes on fuel tanks at Libya's largest operating refinery. The National Oil Corporation says it could declare a force majeure if attacks continue. President Trump has confirmed that he secretly swapped planes as he left a NATO summit in Turkey last month, citing a possible security threat. The revelation comes after reports that Trump boarded Air Force One on the 8th of July in full view of television cameras before being moved in a catering truck to a military aircraft. Air Force One was then used as a decoy, carrying the White House press corps and senior aides across Europe, all reportedly unaware that the president was no longer on board. Addressing the operation for the first time on Tuesday evening, Trump said he was simply following the advice of the Secret Service and the military.
Well, it's only up to Secret Service. I just follow what they'd like to do. So I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say. I have a lot of threats. I have a lot of threats that you don't know about. Any consequential president has a lot of threats. Non-consequential presidents don't get threats. And I think that I'm maybe the most consequential president.
Germany is marking the 65th anniversary of the construction of the Berlin Wall on Wednesday with an installation and an open-air exhibition in front of the Brandenburg Gate. 65 years ago, the wall went up, dividing East and West Berlin and becoming one of the most powerful symbols of the Cold War. It stood for 28 years until it fell on the 9th of November 1989. At least 136 people were killed trying to cross the wall, most of them shot by East German border guards. More than 75,000 people were imprisoned for attempting to leave East Germany, while around 5,000 managed to escape to the west. The wall was built to stop a mass exodus of East Germans westwards. Around 3 million people had already left East Germany between 1949 and 1961.
I like it.
From all of us here at A News, thank you for watching.